là dans subu tundro sope qui kutap tenzi wamula chone sungshenangyo.
Thank you everyone. Now we will have the speech by representative of Swiss Tibet Friendship Association, Madam Tenzin Wangmola.
Nambalenge tsawalol yatashile taripe bakawashra chon tojiche tanda ta subu tundu sobe chongmini chane chige kashe yodo dinde sunzanye tangu French nalia kamu tukti shoyin. Chers amis suisses, merci d'être là à côté de nous. On a vraiment besoin de vous. Merci d'être toujours là en personne et même avec votre chien. Longbo shani longbo shinda ji na ya pheu yue ba du de la kang e chimbu yo de nga zu sang me ha ku yo de nga zu sang me la nyam yu chu yo de dung e ngam ja su su pa ma pin ya sang ma bet lung be na le ni yuk sha longbo sa ba ji na yun du kang e chimbu ba an kang e chimbu de yu du chokku yue bi na pemmesi ke chimbure sangbutu lo peji ta sumju sogu nyelya ta shibju chajo du nganzu pebe jizo ta so de pebe jizo ta gotsu be tuzu delia chige dindege nganzu liya romu chene chokbutani ani subu tundu sobe Swiss Tibetan Friendship Association chene so yore zu yore tudu nganzu pebe jizo nane chik nga tingdu genze gyajala Quran pet nganzu jizo nane kadin chembu mi kadin chembu shidare chale pemesi mangu namre shunu tsokbe zu ya Quran charo namre nganzu Swiss nale jizo tembu da yagu sunye chik Quran re pyuri re dele chokbu mebi yina nganzu kale kharze yabu yimbi ne kapure ke shengure lungbe jodan shengure lungbe miten zu samlu tangdang shengure dinde sunza nganzu lo shibju da peje shibju chado yore GSTF Gesellschaft für Schweizerisch-Tibetische Freundschaft subitündu soba zubre an lo shibju ne chene tsukjung tu sus jamenya ne tembe chetubre lo ni don chupke nalia nganzu de Swiss romande ta French keji shesa saje dinalia nganzu keji shene Swiss mi dindege su yongu droit Swiss mi su yoni ta nganzu pöde tol ji kalchao do simshu chenbu chene konzu su yongu do ani chige ge dindes chen ta ji chendo do si do nganzu pöde ge tuzu mes chen kandes lap durwe dindes sonzam bet lamsam ta nganzu pöde kashe chige mongbu ta kendong nganzu mi ni shuyore lo ni don chopke nalia de French speaking Swiss romande la gotsuni guti nganzu guti ni yore chik di René Langer sena nyama Suisse ki lutyu nalia dan de Geneva lutyu nalia Quran sidung gi mi chambure lo monggur nga Quran chidu na Geneva gi ti de dan de sane honest ni jore on dinalia utina ani utina be tuzu de yang nganzu pevalya samna ni Quran nyama ne peva samna ngore ani onegi uti nandu kunage menkan sunamla dendi shuni dawa gebet se tangu 1. August dwalya tabet dujin chambutang dwa kaisen Swiss lungbatsu nyama rawanda ni lungba sabatsu di dawa gebet se tangu jilya gozusha an di tizulya namyu tawari Swiss mit chambu chilin chinsi keji shegre di nyamodelya menkan sunamla nganzu peve chidu kuran la kushep cheni René Langer ke Quran ko dendi shuni kamuna jure di dindes chene tondu ne zu dinde hakko du pemesi so pobu pebe imbe pobu ta ani peba ya tirdu samia jikpet samedi charong chardo René Langer Quran nganzo Swiss romande na yang udi chikre ani Quran ga ngale ke jitine ta nge digdus chene shuyi ani nganzo mi Ketchumbuchik dans le Jacques Ré. Ketchumbuchik, Pierre, tu es où? Viens ici, si tu veux. Quand on le chambouré de l'enganzu togu bet, ning bachene, nyamane, takbari, ngogu chika yondu, kuna nimdo pire. Ani, togu yona pemmesi tsa chambouré. Ta tsa chambu yimbati, nganzu sim togu gore, nganzu puri ge. Kunzu robo yapyo che togu re machin, kunzu kombo tsangma yap togu mari, nganzu tabzu nalya. Dinde sonza nganzu jizo nalya. 소수 제토부 된소 같이 제토부이나 아니 소수 내가 제ben에 점차 지게 롱배 날 때는 다 로지니 솜가주 니슈 죽주 차가 요리 지게 정부인데 여도 피난소 레레신도 개발 지게 정부 여도 지게 정부야 내주 셴나 아니 내주 마셴비는 셴예조야 아니 내주디 주 랭가테 베네체비는 안조딘데 삼송 베베 Mangu yore dualia Geneva peri mangu yore Lausanne peri mangu yore Geneva ya peji nangmi gejut yongla chongsore bebe nangmi geju nganzu Geneva Lausanne ya bebe nangmi gyats yore ta chige ge tiwa mangu tigre tiwa khaji len jab thure khaji jab thu mare kange khar yoba 개게 당구마리 현재게 참참 당구마리 나래 근데 지금도 참참니 주 창무 신금인도 근데 손장 안주 French speaking part de 안주 Swiss romande nalia tête di seuil le Tibet a besoin de nous peu là 안주 창무 yapyo goris chen dinal yang 안주 bet 닝저부 chen 수시든데 제 빠르든데 루 아니 내주든데 약간 소래 맵든데 루니 Pebe lucu ta neju ta kange ta doami kange ani ecological kuriu ke kange dinde dame nanzo dinde chene tini durtu lo debu nganzu se uyu mangu ta ni sevre ta sus jamen na yang nganzu tsukjun tu yore kunanzo ta di pemesi ya go dus chene chige ke nal su yorgi yins chene ta nganzu nal ya dinde chige jamen shenye chig yore kunang kanga durtsa so Day and to enjoy your anti Tamdu Chen as a galette Sudu, Toji Sikina to Pebet Soben Nane, pretty suine than to Langate. Ani Susu Tomutolia Tam Nami in a Pemisi Yaoyori, the Ketchumbucho to dig up your chigre, Yapyo Shindaji Kariori Sana Nangmi Manguyori, Poo Manguki, the one the Sanjo. Swiss 나리 보고 먹고 기요래 딱 밤에 보고야 뷰리럽야 별 나양 아주 베베 시리다 깨 간걸로 짬에 두고 두스체는 시요래 깨깨고요래 아주 콩도 서버리 재밀이야 데레 대양 아주 수직에 째는 단에 제초 말이 시요 말이 다 제초서 라왕게 롱보 요스질이야 아주 랭게 가르선 수술 보고야 깨럽야 디케 충분히라래 선부도 이 타마수이네 도지시 키나즈 볼라몰라 예민다르게 다르 볼라몰라 망어 통부도 키나즈 아와다 아니 중중중이야 아니 랭게직 심나 아니 송게디 벽게디 짱마지 견나 빈 야고요데 베네체비 있는가 치게 롱베 날레네 달로 죽주 두었다 아 벽게디 떼식 송겹 제토야기 빨라암라까지래 그나저 딱바리시 날야 벽에잡 칠월야 지게게 가리잡이네 개바민도 날야 벽에잡 수구도 근데 손산다 대치게 롱베날양아 윤두 따와 드링 만자 베비레 다 단들 로 죽주체네 벽에대 싱기요리 치드 먹고 당그 민도가 잠잠 어처도 데레 칼 칸잠지 깨지 셰토야지 차송 안기 빨라암라 까디린데 손자 키나조 빨라암라 볼라몰라 인자 That's jig bugu you jig naronas. Ani tama delia tanda rene logic rage kinan kangaloya ani trashi diles chen sura nas chen sungu dukran teri bonda petu masons kran lenge mongu yore kran sidung gi lenge mongu na ne su chite lo ne kran ya kerki lenge mongu shwish miri puri tundalya ya ecology Kuryuk sungyap cheyada name nanzolega dinde nan lengi mongu do dinde sunza teri petu mindu gonda sungu do 아니 지게 더구절이야 아니 도지치 소라나 아니 도잖아. Merci à vous deux.
Je saisis cette occasion pour remercier tous les membres de l'association d'amitié suisse-tibétaine pour tout ce que vous faites dans le quotidien. Dine yang kya nga tu kamchunga ringala ani kimbe naya yi di je la danda nga tu Europe puri shunu ki ani kusap kudinaro na shue yi.
Thank you, Tenzin La, and now we will continue with the slogan shouting.
We demand human rights!
In Tibet!
We demand...
유럽의 신호투조 섭슈베 행남소 드린 먼저 대 유나이티드 네이션게 gembe 안에 던져 드려주길라 안에 벽에 레본 그저 간데 좀라 안에 Tibetan Youth Congress ke zozo gomutundala 안에 먼저 스위스 리echtenstein pyramima ke zozo la Sibir Zato Topa ke Tokshan Sus ki Permit Topa ke Tokshan Ane Lenga Namutsu Tsangma Terinde Geneva la Pe Tubadi Ning Tabune Tujiche da Dashtele Shuayi Kambunga Gesha Inji Tola Ji She Chubuche Andijela Nga Kyut Pegeji Tola Nga Chi Sheaji On behalf of the Tibetan Youth Association in Europe, I would like to welcome everyone here attending at the UN demonstration here in Geneva in front of the Palais Wilson. Once again, we all gathered together in front of the United Nations in Geneva today to raise attention for the issue of Tibet, not only for all of you here in front of me, but also in the United Nations and to everyone around the world. At the same time, I would like to thank the Tibetan community, Switzerland and Liechtenstein for organizing today's protest during the ongoing Human Rights Council session of the United Nations. A protest that is urgently needed because these days human rights have to be saved in every aspect around the world. The oppression in Tibet hasn't gotten better in all these years. In fact, it even got worse. Last year, the Tibetan Advocacy Coalition uncovered a campaign by the CCP to not only restrict Tibetan language and Tibetan Buddhism, but ultimately erase the Tibetan identity. The objective of the campaign was to break the lineage, roots, connections, and origins. The CCP has been destroying the Tibetan culture for many years and decades now, and they will be trying to do it in the future as well. But this action needs to be stopped now. This year, the Winter Olympic Games happen in Beijing. Us, the Tibetan Youth Association in Europe, are in collaboration with other human rights organizations, have started the campaign No Beijing 2022. The CCP and the IOC lost a huge amount of their reputation during this protest and this campaign, and there were many news and stories told about the human rights violation around the world. We are completely convinced that the No Beijing 2022 campaign was only an opener for great things that will be coming in the near future. We will not stop and raise our voices for all the Tibetans and the people around the world who don't have the opportunity to speak up for themselves for the better world. After months and months of protesting and calling up Michelle Bachelet, the former High Commissioner for Human Rights at the United Nations, not to forget to visit Tibet during her trip to China at the beginning of this year and speak up about the human rights violations happening there, after which she didn't say anything about Tibet in her message after she came back to Switzerland. She resigned from her duty as a High Commissioner. But only a couple of minutes before she resigned, the UN released the report about human rights violations happening in China, which human rights activists have demanded for years and years. The fact that it took them so long to release this report is just embarrassing for Michelle Bachelet and the whole United Nations. The UN, with all what they stand for, couldn't release a simple report which clarifies what the CCP is doing, not only in their own country, but to many other countries as well in the whole world. So I'm asking the United Nations now, what more needs to happen for the United Human Rights Council to gather enough courage to show some backbone and bring Tibet back on the map? We're here today again to call the United Nations Human Rights Council to gather enough courage to show them backbone and bring Tibet on the map, and to finally take responsibility and use the platform to raise the issue of Tibet. But we will need much more than just fine words by them. We demand concrete actions and sanctions to ensure that China is being held accountable. If the UN member states fail to do so, they are giving China a free pass on all the crimes they have committed against Tibetans in Tibet. So, to the United Nations, don't waste our time. Don't waste your time during the Human Rights Council sessions again. Hold China accountable now. We won't stop to resist and protest for our cause until we achieve our goal of a free Tibet and no more human rights violations made by the CCP around the world. nga kadu na kembeji la nga tisha kugap jiradu nga takpa mi kadu yumeta mi susu yungbu bata gemba shemba yago jita je nga ngara kembela mi mangbo thona nga ngara semchu ji pabu do lega chia ye pala amla nyama kunzo pöne zule je de sus le je da los shipju ngap mangbo dugo ro da nga da de gegyo da sus le nga kunzo nangshi 냥바가 두주도 냥바다 냠요도 춘 중요한 말이나 나도 수사다 암전에 보여줘 보래 예 발람나 강에 가르 중요면 예 몰라 콘서 강에 가르 중요면 먼저 룽바 근데 쇼이면 동에 같이 싸우고 이면 뒤 상방 아 보야마도 통해야 맞다 다 뒤치네 뒤에 미 인데 망골레버디 앞에 가고 총 그뒤 얘나 나 캠베인데 주도 미 마운트 페나 나 알아 다 버톨라다 맞어도 그 람세 터비아다 dit사마 게 셈슈디 파두도 나 칼레 망보 겨울 가서 쉬는 날 칼레 망보 겨울 그뒤에나 캠베 겨울 가서 허다 바다 용고를 탑시 지고를 칼레 겨고를 아니 가서 쉬는 쪽고 매버체다 나 수베 자도 저거체 버리 미마체 버미서 가서 정말 칼레 허다 바다 겨울을 안 뒤치나 칼레 겨버디 칸다 탄도 미 망스 페나 다 드리는시 가서 배 공부 총스도 정보시나 니마니마인데 단나도 드리 시다 망고 페샤 안 뒤치나 고치 강투도 주만에 강투도 페로나 수행이 맞아 걔한테 맨날 안서 깔래 같이 겸나 안서 계셔 같이 셔나 암조 년년 수지 맨날 안서 깔래디 초 중요 말을 안서 깔래디 여기 여기 걔한테 생고래 미션나 생고래 유나이티드 네이션 생고래 뒤치네 कुछ 강투도 걔한테 페로나 걔한테 빙가 아니 걔한테 그 너미 상마 부부이나 쉔부이나 겜부이나 키바요 말을 कुछ 페로나 수행 강투도 안 뒤치네 뒤에 상마 주니바 가셔다 타르 못해 이게를 뒤치네 뒤에 근데 오늘 시다 토지나 쉬어야 아니 가서 교보 제어로 와요 아니 회결로 시다 토지나
유럽 규리슈누기 아니 속도 달라라라 투치나스 쉐이 디제네 양가르마 좀 미투네 기브나야이
Thank you, Dalala. We will now continue with the slogan shouting.
We demand human rights.
In Tibet.
We demand human rights.
In Tibet.
We demand human rights.
In Tibet.
Stop repression and torture.
In Tibet.
Stop repression and torture.
In Tibet.
Stop repression and torture.
In Tibet.
Tibet is burning.
China is lying.
Tibet is burning.
China is lying.
Tibet is burning. Return to Tibet. Stop the culture genocide. In 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 Tibet. People of the world. Support us. 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 Release, release. Vincent Yama. Release, release. Vincent Yama. Release, release. Vincent Yama. Release, release. Vincent Yama. United Nations. Wake up, wake up. 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 What we want. We want justice. What we want. We want justice. What we want. We want justice. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. Long live. Dalai Lama. Long live. Dalai Lama. Long live. Dalai Lama. People of the world. Support us. People of the world. Support us. People of the world. Support us. We demand human rights. In Tibet. 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 Stop repression. In Tibet. Stop repression. In Tibet. Stop torture. In Tibet. Stop torture. In Tibet. Stop torture. In Tibet. Stop killing. In Tibet. Stop killing. In Tibet. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. Wake up, wake up. United Nations. We demand human rights. In Tibet. We demand human rights. In Tibet. We demand human rights. In Tibet. Stop killing. In Tibet. Stop killing. In Tibet. Stop torture. In Tibet. Stop torture. In Tibet. Stop repression. In Tibet. Stop repression. In Tibet. Stop culture genocide. In Tibet.
Stop torture!
In Tibet.
Tibet is burning!
China is lying.
Tibet is burning!
China is lying.
Tibet is burning!
China is lying.
Stop the killing!
In Tibet.
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 Let the Dalai Lama!
Return to 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 Tibet.
Stop cultural genocide!
In Tibet.
Stop cultural genocide!
In Tibet.
Release political prisoners!
In Tibet.
Release political prisoners!
In Tibet.
Release political prisoners!
In Tibet.
Release! Release!
Vincent Yama.
Release! Release!
Vincent Yama.
Release! Release!
Vincent Yama.
United Nations!
We want justice.
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 What we want!
We want justice.
What we want!
We want justice.
What we want!
We want justice.
Wake up! Wake up!
United Nations.
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 Longshore! Longshore!
Bhumika Longshore.
Longshore! Longshore!
Bhumika Longshore.
Longshore! Longshore!
Bhumika Longshore.
Macha! Macha!
Simshu Macha.
Macha! Macha!
Simshu Macha.
We demand human rights!
In Tibet.
We demand human rights!
In Tibet.
We demand human rights!
In Tibet.
Stop repression!
In Tibet.
Stop repression!
In Tibet.
Stop torture!
In Tibet.
Stop torture!
In Tibet.
Stop torture!
Nations,
We want justice.
what do we want?
We want human rights in Tibet.
What do we want?
We want human rights in Tibet.
What do we want?
We want human rights in Tibet.
Wake up, wake up!
United Nations.
Wake up, wake up!
United Nations.
Wake up, wake up!
United Nations.
No human rights!
In Tibet.
No human rights!
In Tibet.
No religious freedom!
In Tibet.
No religious freedom!
In Tibet.
No press freedom!
In Tibet.
No press freedom!
In Tibet.
Long live!
Dalai Lama.
Long live!
Dalai Lama.
Mr. Dalai Lama!
Return to Tibet.
Mr. Dalai Lama!
Return to Tibet.
Mr. Dalai Lama!
Return to Tibet.
Space burning!
China is lying.
Space burning!
China is lying.
là qui Suisse dans les deux publics mais qui ça que c'est pas des gens en Guyane.
Press statement by Tibetan Community Switzerland and Liechtenstein, 23rd September 2022. Members of the Tibetan Community of Switzerland and Liechtenstein are gathered in front of the Palais Wilson in protest against China's continued violation of fundamental freedoms of the Tibetan people in Tibet. As the 51st session of the UN Human Rights Council is currently underway in Palais des Nations, members of the Tibetan Community of Switzerland and Liechtenstein yet again call upon the United Nations and its leadership to take concerned actions in bringing China accountable for heinous violation of human rights in Tibet. In addition, the Tibetan community welcomes and congratulates the appointment of new High Commissioner of Human Rights, Mr. Volker Turk, despite former High Commissioner of Human Rights, Madam Michelle Bachelet's silence and absence of response for calls from victims of China's human rights abuses. The Tibetan community have not given up to place faith in the good office of the United Nations, in particular the Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights, believing the office will hear and do justice for Tibet with the new chief, Mr. Volker Turk. The situation in Tibet is deteriorating significantly with China's ever-growing suppression and subjugation of Tibetan people. Under China's so-called zero-COVID measures in Tibet, the situation in Tibet continues is grim. Mismanagement and misuse of the pandemic situation in Tibet calls for an urgent attention. Quarantine centers in Tibet without beds and serviceless quarantine centers installed by China in Tibet are not only violation of rights to access good health, but only enforce Tibetans under a double chain situation. Furthermore, China's relentless subjugation and suppression of Tibetan people's culture, religion and language through various state-led assimilatory policies are causes of serious concern. The list of human rights violations by China in Tibet is a long list. In view of the unresolved worrisome situation in Tibet, the community calls the Office of High Commissioner to bring Tibet on the agenda. Bringing Tibet on the agenda is crucial for countering China. Hence, the community urged the UN Human Rights Office to hear, analyze and monitor the situation in Tibet meaningfully with concerned action to mitigate and suppression of Tibetan people by the government of China. Thank you so much.
Kusala la tuche nang shuayin, dijin mutune yang yang azu kembyo nang guyin, kembyo gi je la kutsap tunchu chone songshe nang gre, di kuti shuro nang shuayin.
Stop killing! Stop torturing! Stop torturing! Stop murder! Stop murder! Stop genocide! Stop genocide! United Nations! United Nations! United Nations! Tibet belongs to? Tibet belongs to? Stop the cultural genocide! Release! 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 United Nations! United Nations! United Nations! What we want! What we want! What we want! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! We demand human rights! We demand human rights! We demand human rights! Stop repression and torture! Stop repression and torture! Stop repression and torture! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
Chena, dijene tanji shuwa nang shiwe, Swiss kutsap tunchu kumon chile chuki la chone songshe nang gu.
Thank you, everyone. Now we will have the speech by Ms. Tine Chugila, representative Office of Tibet, Geneva.
Tumadelia, Pegilana Mebeuti, Second Mission Show, Cholian, Nantu, Kujapeni, Teri, Swiss Tang, Liechtenstein, Yuri Chokpagi, Chokshe, Ube, Gule number 2 Tang, Tumi number 2 Tang, Tagana Shingi, Shumde Maimba, Chokpe, Choksho Tang, Tagana Shingi, Teri, Mixegi, Tatanda, Peme Lenzo Tang, Shunugi, Chokso, number 2 Mija, Lia, Yamtu, Ani, Terin de Zombe, Mimal Henge Tangalolia, Samdi Shubada Jani, Yengelia, Kamenang, Manguchigi, Sung Sung, Teri Mixegi, Pemima Mangu Pesha, Delia, Tochi Cheshuain, Zawegi, Legu, Gutinang Tulia, Sem Dingne, Peba Manguchig Yam Shunang Bina. Tende Quran Sulia Simshu Pariada, Antana Shingi, Maobalia Mutini, Legupealia, Tende to be Sugre Samgudo, Di Indugalia, Ka Manguchik, Sataringune Pesha, Mixegi Basel ne Pebe, Tonachum Sulani, Liechtenstein ne Peyusere, and number 2 Sataringune, Shogengabu ne Peyusere, and number 2 Kulekyon Badilia, Tagana Shingi, Susugi, Gendi, Shenang Badilia, Tochi Cheshuain. Teri Shunu Sane Shunu Chokso Dang and Tagana Shingi Swiss Subetunjogi Gulegi Sungso Tawegi Pegi Kig Rikshungi Sungap Chiadi Nanzu Lengere Nimbinele Chilo Gagabnala Shubu Dugala Tende Kange Yugre Samgudu Di Indugalia Pamegi Chigen Shene Susupugulia Simshu Teadi Keshore Samgudu Chig Pege Jangorel Yangse Sumbina Semla Pajal Hagre Samgudu Di Imbinani Maobalia Tende Tande Chale Shunge Dunzu Chig Susugi Langa Tede Yobine Maobalia Tende Susu Chizona Letsu Korea di Pajadi Hagre Samgudu Di Indugalia Pamatulia Pegushuai number 2 Susugi Simgalia Pedugalia Pukutulia, Tende Chik Sorona Shuairwa, Dida Dani Chik Shualia, Nejanganzu Nimasum Rangagi, Namte Gazolia, Shuduchiagi, Subjong Chik Sobre, Subjong di Jukdongi, Tanganzu, Leguchunjun Chik Shabi, Dekapsu, Chokcharwa Chiki Sungudu, Kandapado Tangegi, Tonashida Chimes, Yimbi Nele, Nejan, Kurangi Popolalia, Tiwati Isa. Penangi Neda Kanje Yorwe, Pola Kuchingale, Dumchik Shedalani. Dekapsu Shine Tornangle Susungudurba, Tende Anzuki Mirab Gembasuki Kule Kyomba, Tagana Shingi, Tupunyamba di Korea, Shine Torwachik Lesu Sungsu, Di Indugale, Tende number 2 Nangle, Pukutsugi, Torwale Tuya di Kechambure Samgudu, Di Indugalia, Tochisi, Inchi Minchi Susugi, Pukutsulia, Susu Kangi Nyamba di Korea, Nanda Chik Sumbine, Inchi Minchi Sumrona Shuai, Nanzugi Chizonalia Shungetsu, Simshu Meba Marsha, Kanda Nanzu Nimasumgi Subjondinalia Tona Chumsurba, Anikashegi Prene Lebegi, Dumshe Dugalia, Koran to Mikshu Tangudu, Mikshu Tanya di Susu Shata Yoni Tangraba, Mikshu Shoria di Susu Shata Yoni Shoria Dugalia, Kutu Simshu Meba Marsha, Imbine, Chorwa Kegoyagi, Kuriu di Soyadi Nanzugi Lengere, Di Indugala number 2, Tembelia Pedugalia, Katotochik, Shungetsu, Nyamdo Tipero Na Shuai. Dida Jani Tatande Chalia, Nyamte Gazo, Domi Lenzogi, Tondo Peng, Napchum Naji di Toda Toshimbare, Tondo Dida Jani Chik Shualia, Kanda Chinda Gebete Sumjuliata, UN High Commissioner, Champu Michelle Bachelet, Koran, Legune Mapur, Kong Kamachoma Konglia, Shine, East Turkestan, Shar Turkestan Shugor Bata, Xinjiang, Ganagi, Kainalia, Xinjiang Shugudwa, Xinjiang Nendo di Tumbre, Nendo di Tuni, Nendo di Tangarang, Nedon Chugune, Swiss, Yotubalia, Dekapsune, Ketchashagure, Nendo Chicleare, Nendo Chicleare, Ta Morangi 수수기 레군디 마샤기 까마충만이야 년도 뒤된 투브레 다 딜이야 양아기 너쇼 가졸래요로 디켐베기 모란된 토요 마르와 디 인도갈리아 다가나신기 배경갈리 직년도 직된 구구들라는 건주기 상해동 주군의 랍다림바 수도 갸데 아니 메트니에 갸이 디갈리아 넘버 쪽이다 사멜리아 네미나 제제 넘버 값수 텐데 직디갈리아 슈로나 슈엔이와 안 디다 자니 간다 신장기 년도 디날리아 야나기다 신장 날리아 직 포스 레버 캠 캄 망고치 요레 안 디 인도갈리아 디 라테 차버도 직 차버리 임비네 디다 베난기 네당디 양은주기 삼바마수네 직 제월 다가란 차 대기요레 라야디 타탄다 스페셜 rapporteur on slavery 단대 차기다 세요 람룩도 직 슈구도 대기다 그런 유엔기 캘리버치기 년도 직 예자 때문에 타탄다디 단대기 조함이 토땅 일hen조 값수 그런 년도디 년도 쉬야돼 디나리아 세부 세경 가리 커요레 슈비나 샤 투르키스탄리아 탄데 차리아 유베 포스 레버 캠기 직조단디 시마치신 베나리에 두스 디 인도갈리아 디갈리아 텐데 직 심주 지구구돌라니 코란기 년도날리아 교요레 디 인도갈리아 먼저면에 년도디 감 투두직 세자 주비에 안 다가나신기 심접칼리아 자두갈리아 다가랑 갈리아 직 슈견이 안 넘버 2 인지민지 디 로구구돌라니 응안주기 슈비어와 안디 인도갈리아 자외기 응안주 저저 슈구다 헨조 가도 초비네 만주모네 슈두기 레규피기어라 다가나신기 술소기에 소기어레 단데 헨조디 리아테비나다 직 술소 직 단다 생이 숫자골이야 소야레 술소 니버디 단다 아리기 슝잡 라리아 소야레 니베기 술소디 콜라 빅스틱 슈비나 디 단다 깜용체 양시다 제베 갈리아타 술소직 소야레 사웨기다 변한기 최대 라완당 자니 아니 디갈리아 술소디 디기 믹세기 직 개침부 가리차고도 슈비나 단다 아리 슝기 베베 제두바요와 스페셜 코디네이터 for Tibetan issues ladi azra zeya 코라랑 단다 워싱턴에 주폐기요 안 다가나신기 UK기 ambassador for religious freedom 단다 UK기 special envoy 지교레 최대 라완갈랴 코라의 술소딜리아 폐기요 안 다가나신기 아리 슝접기 ambassador의 폐기요 디다자니 단다 야가 다람살라니 kalin chiti ko kalin nunji domlae phegi di indu kalya surso di ke chimbu chikcha degi ye shuyan ta internalya sikhashe chikshu chogache to all the supporters of the Tibetan movement and especially to the United Nations, it is time that you speak up on Tibet. You have been silent for quite some time, and this silence is being interpreted as you not taking up the responsibility on the overall human rights situation across the globe and in particular in Tibet. Today, we, the people and the members of the community of Tibet, Switzerland and Liechtenstein have assembled here to particularly appeal to the United Nations, especially the United Nations Human Rights Council, to break your silence and to speak up on the human rights violations that are being carried out in China and in particularly in Tibet. Time and again, Tibetans have, as noted earlier, appealed to the United Nations to hold an independent investigation, especially monitoring and reporting on the human rights situation in Tibet. Your own experts since the 2019 have come together and appealed to you that the human rights situation in Tibet, Xinjiang, Hong Kong and overall in China has deteriorated and there is an urgent need to carry out investigation, monitoring and reporting on the same. However, you have ignored your own experts, and I think we all think that it is time that you listen not only to the Tibetans, to the Uyghurs, to the Hong Kongers, but also to your own experts. Recently, the High Commissioner for Human Rights has published a report on Xinjiang, which clearly talks about the crimes against humanity being perpetuated in Xinjiang by China. Similarly, the Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Slavery has reported that the arrangements found in Tibet are very similar to the arrangements of forced labor found in Xinjiang. Therefore, this clearly calls for an independent investigation and monitoring and reporting on the situation. The Special Rapporteur has gone a step ahead and said that there are clear, reasonable grounds to believe that crimes against humanity may have been committed, and therefore the Special Rapporteur has called for an independent investigation. We reiterate his call and appeal to the United Nations, in particular the Human Rights Council, to kindly investigate and remotely monitor, if not possible to go to Tibet and report on the situation there. Currently, the zero COVID policy by the Xi Jinping regime is wreaking havoc in Tibet. This is being used as a garb, as a disguise to oppress and suppress the Tibetans. We are seeing videos after videos, pictures after pictures of Tibetans suffering in so-called quarantine centers. These quarantine centers are not aimed to recuperate or for the recovery of the patients. These are mainly aimed so that Tibetans can be controlled, can be suppressed, and can be repressed. The world has slowly come out of COVID situation, whereas China, especially aiming towards the Executive Committee meeting on October 16, is using the COVID policy as a garb, I reiterate, as a disguise to basically control the Tibetans. It is time that the United Nations speaks on it. We call upon the member states to kindly press China, not only on the COVID policy, but also on the colonial-style boarding schools, which are again aimed towards cultural genocide of Tibetans. We have seen that the Tibetan language is being replaced by Chinese, Mandarin language. We are seeing that the monasteries are being destroyed. We are seeing that the statues of worship of Tibetan Buddhism are being destroyed. These are clearly aimed to ensure that the Tibetan identity, the Tibetan civilization is destroyed. This, if the world remains silent, would be a huge loss for the entire world. Therefore, in my closing remarks, I would once again like to thank all our supporters, both inside the United Nations, especially the member states, as well as the Swiss citizens here. Thank you for your support, and this is just a beginning. We have not yet reached our goal. The path is long and we have to continue our struggle. And I once again call upon each one of you to take up your responsibility, not just as a Tibetan, as a friend of Tibet, but also as a human being, to respect other fellow human beings. Thank you so much.
Kusa tunju kumu chile chukila la tuji ches shuenyi